Hello Wiser Shifters, welcome to another video. I'm your host Yves Jeanfield here, and today we are going to explore a little bit more about inflation. Let's start the video. Alright, so I made a video about a couple of days ago, reference to what to stockpile, and the video will be in the description below. And I cover a few things what you should stockpile on if inflation or hyperinflation take place. Now, let's go back. I want to really cover what is inflation and how we should look at it and really consider those things. Now, this is all the things that you should consider. 6 things. If you see these things happening, you know inflation is about to take place, not only because a season is in place, like for example the holidays. Of course, we know that prices and things goes up due to different season and holidays that might be happening, right? So that we understand. And of course, every decade or so prices go up, so we understand the common changes, so we know that basically, and we can basically say that's part of inflation. But let's really dig a little bit deeper and really look at it from another perspective and really trying to understand why inflation takes place and what it is exactly to the core. So I have a few notes, right? So we know what inflation is. We know inflation takes place over time, right? Because if goods, we have not enough good, and then you have the value of the goods can cause inflation. For example, currency and everything else can lose its value. But at the end of the day, we know what inflation is, and if you don't know, Google it. It'll give you a clear-cut definition what is inflation and hyperinflation. So look that up. So let's get into it. So now, with the understanding of what is inflation and what is hyperinflation, and we know that America have encountered such thing before. For example, the Great Depression, and also 2008, where we had the recession, right? So a few of us has experienced it, and our ancestors has experienced it too. So being here in America, we've seen how inflation can impact society and the economy, right? So being aware of that, you should be in a state of mind where not to fear it, but be ready for it when it take place, and how to protect yourself and your family for being impacted by that, right? So if you understand what I just said, you know the hardness and hardship that you can face if inflation or hyperinflation take place, right? So we know if inflation continues the rate that it's going, it can easily reach hyperinflation, right? Hyperinflation, when things get out of control. A bottle of water could easily be $1.25, and the hyperinflation cost could be $3 or $4. That's crazy. Who would pay $3, $4 for a bottle of water? I wouldn't, and I know you probably wouldn't either. Imagine paying $7 or $10 for a gallon of gas. That's hyperinflation, and it can easily get there if we're not careful. So that's why I encourage you guys to prep your water, your food, your basic necessities to get by for 3 months, 6 months, a year, or longer, extended. So let's get into it. So now I'm gonna cover 6 things that can definitely be a sign of inflation, and I'm gonna give you an example what to look for, right? So number 1, look for demand pull inflation. So demand pull inflation is when certain goods, right? The demand for certain goods and services within the economy have changed. For example, if the supply chain is the prices goes up, right? And knowing that knowing that if you used to pay for example, a ticket to a concert, or what's a good example? Say you used to pay $10 for a pack of chicken, right? And now, because of the process on how they get the meat to the store from the place where they process the meat, from leaving the factory, getting to the trucks to be delivered to the store, and for you to go and buy it. If there's a change in that supply chain, a change in that supply chain, you know that cost itself going to be passed down to the consumer, which is you. So when you don't prepare and there's a eruption within that supply chain, the cost is going to be passed down to you. Of course, they're going to absorb the cost, right? So if they used to cost them $10 for that pack of meat, and then the factory had an issue where they process the meat has an issue and they have to raise the price, guess what? Now they have to pass that down to the transportation. Transportation may have to pay more on fuel, or even for their drivers, for truck drivers. And then if that happened, the transportation gonna pass it down to where it's being delivered, which is the stores. And now if the store have to pay more to get it transferred from the process, right, from the house where it get processed, right, the factory, and see the chain reaction. And then the store owner, since they have to pay more for it to be delivered to them, and guess what? They're gonna pass that $10 pack of meat that you used to pay for could be easily increased by $3 or $4, and you're looking at $15 or $14, right, or possibly more. So you can see how a demand pull inflation can impact you, right? So number two, the second thing is cost push inflation. Now, that is something that we have to be very, very careful with, because if there is a cost on wages and material goods goes up, that's another thing that could be passed down to you also. For example, if recently we were dealing with lumbers, right? The woods that you used to build houses, because there was a shortage of that, and how it impact the contractors from building homes. There is a huge inflation on houses. Even though it's supposed to be a housing market, a lot of people are buying up houses. But if you think about it, everything has a chain reaction. If one part is cut or disrupted, it goes down. It's a domino effect. And at the end of at the bottom, it's us, the consumers. So you can see how how easy we can be impacted, right? So these costs can be passed down from one chain to another, but at the very bottom, we don't want. So another thing, number three, we can look at is increase in money supply, right? So if you look at how America is printing a lot of money, right? And based on the Federal Reserve, that note, that dollar, supposed to represent a certain amount of gold. Since the Federal Reserve have removed from the representation of the gold itself, it just gave them the permission to just print money. And if you know about any time money is overprinted and it's in circulation and we have too much money, that can disrupt the whole economy, because when you have too much of anything, it loses value. And guess what? Our dollar is slowly losing its value, and that is an increase in money supply. And once we have too much money in circulation from corn, it's not looking too good, not at all. And some people may not understand that itself, but if you really think about it, think it through, the way that we are printing money, how we receive the stimulus checks, the Biden proposal to the family who were separated under the Trump administration, the immigrants, they were proposing to give them $400,000, where all these unemployment money that was given, and not only that, because a lot of people were unemployed, right? There is multiple things that were covered under the stimulus bills that passed. That everybody that received that $1,200, guess what? That is more money that is going into our overall debt that we already in. And not only, we can't forget the money that we spend overseas or at other budget or other things that we already participating in. So we are continuously digging a hole deeper and deeper and deeper. So understand the increase of money supply that is in circulation that we keep printing as a country is slowly going to diminish our value in currency. So we have to understand that itself. Devaluation, it goes hand in hand. That's number 4. It goes hand in hand with how money is being printed, right? So I have in front of me a few things that I know that if we pay attention to, we can easily help the economy. And if the economy is doing well, you could be doing well, because at the end of the day, we are at the bottom, the tax-paying individual. That's you and that's me. So we know that portion, right? So number 5 is raising the wages, right? So a while back, before the pandemic, a lot of people were fighting and debating, talking about, McDonald's employees should get paid $15 an hour. You can have your opinion about that. I'll have mine. But at the end of the day, think about it. Different states has different pay or wages because of the living situation, right? Here in the state of Florida, the wages is low, but as you can see, the current rate of inflation, it's becoming difficult to live comfortably, right? Because the pay and the living cost is so unbalanced. Whereas, for example, if you take California or New York, where someone could be making $20-$30, that would be great if you was living here. The pay that is in New York or California is completely different, because the cost of living in New York is way out of control. You talking about a 1-bedroom gonna cost you a lot, versus you probably paying the same amount if you were living here in Florida, where if you're paying $2,300 for a 1-bedroom, in here you probably can get a 2-bedroom, maybe a nice one. But if you think about it, you look at cost of living and minimum wage, it doesn't make sense. Now, if they raise minimum wage, guess what's going to happen to cost of living? It's not going to stay there. It's going to increase. And when that happens, guess what? You're going to have a inflation and imbalance that's going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And over time, that 401k you got saved up, or those stocks that you have saved up, all that is going to be something that you're going to have to continuously increase. Your retirement, back then you could easily retire out on $2 million, right? Not today, or 20 years from now. It's going to be difficult because inflation is happening rapidly, and if we're not careful, we're going to find ourselves in a tough situation. Last but not least, policy and regulations. Now, if you're not paying attention to Congress and Biden administration, whomever is in office, if you're watching this video later on, whomever is in office, whether in federal or local, it doesn't matter. A politician move their lips and they lie. If you're not paying attention and fighting locally things that can impact you, you losing. And if you're not paying attention on the federal level and trying to understand what is in place, even though they propose a bill that sound great, that is a 500 page long, you and someone or somebody have to do their due diligence and read every word, because they sneak things within these bills. So once it passes, you find yourself with new laws in place and new policies in place that we cannot go back on. You have an amendment against it to change that. But if you think about it, often when we give the government our freedom or our, way of life, sometimes we don't get that back. And if we do, we get a little bit back. So don't give up on learning what's going on around you, and especially in this time that we live. God don't give me a spirit of fear, but one thing for sure, he said, don't be ignorant. And so I'm telling you, think it through. A lot of things that's happening now, especially with inflation, you're going to find yourself in a tough situation, right? Because the way things are going, look at gas, for example. We are paying a lot. I'm not sure how much you're paying at your, in your county or the state that you're currently in. But one thing for sure, we can see it is increasing all over. And some people might say, well, it's the holiday. Of course, it's going to increase because a lot of people won't be traveling. Yes, but if you see how the pandemic took place and how things rapidly changes, and we see how the world is reacting, because it didn't just occur in one country. It's a pandemic. The whole world is impacted, right? So all country economy has been disrupted. So now everybody is scrambling, trying to figure something out, right? And trying to get back to normalcy. But I believe things are not going to go back to the way they are. And this new world order or changes that's taking place, you have to pay attention, because if you don't, you're going to find yourself dealing with inflation, food shortage, water shortage, and common goods, essential shortage, and